Ethan Carter stood on the grand stage of the luxurious ballroom, the soft glow of crystal chandeliers illuminating the faces of the captivated audience. Clad in a tailored navy suit, he exuded confidence and charisma, traits that had propelled him to the heights of success as a billionaire entrepreneur. His deep voice resonated through the room, weaving a narrative of his journey from humble beginnings to unimaginable wealth. "Each one of us has the power to change lives," he declared, his eyes scanning the crowd. "But it's not just about financial success. It's about what we do with that success. It's about giving back." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the marble walls, a testament to the impact of his words. Ethan had always believed in the importance of philanthropy, an ethos instilled in him by his late mother, who had dedicated her life to helping those in need. As he spoke of the charity's mission to raise funds for public hospitals, he felt a surge of purpose. "Imagine a world where every child has access to health care, where no one has to choose between survival and financial ruin," he continued, his passion palpable. "Together, we can make this vision a reality." The audience was entranced, their eyes gleaming with admiration and hope. Among them was a diverse mix of influential figures, politicians, celebrities, and business magnates, all united in their desire to contribute to the cause. Ethan's speech was not just a presentation. It was a call to action, a reminder of the collective responsibility they shared. As he concluded, the applause grew louder, filling the air with a palpable energy. He stepped down from the podium, his heart racing with exhilaration. He had done it again, moved hearts and inspired action. But amid the celebratory atmosphere, a flicker of unease tugged at his mind. There was something more profound he needed to confront, something that had lingered in the shadows of his success. After the event, the gala transformed into a social gathering, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Ethan mingled with guests, exchanging pleasantries, but his thoughts drifted elsewhere. He felt a sudden urge to step away from the crowd, to escape the glitz and glamour that surrounded him. Just as he was about to slip out, a nurse approached him, her expression earnest and urgent. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice cutting through the noise of the event, "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I work at the public hospital that benefits from your donations. I believe you should see firsthand the impact of your generosity." Ethan raised an eyebrow, surprised by the unexpected request. "Is it really necessary? I appreciate the work you do, but I'm sure the funds are being put to good use." "It's more than just funding," she pressed, her eyes pleading. "There are patients who need hope, who need to know that someone cares. Your presence could mean the world to them." He hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. Although he had always intended his contributions to make a difference, he had never witnessed the reality of those who benefited from his generosity. A part of him felt hesitant, reluctant to face the rawness of suffering outside the confines of his opulent lifestyle. Yet, another part of him felt an undeniable pull, a curiosity to step beyond his world and into a realm that had long been foreign to him. "All right," he finally conceded, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "I'll come with you." As they made their way to the hospital, Ethan's mind raced with conflicting emotions. The sprawling cityscape gave way to the stark reality of the public hospital, its facade worn and unassuming compared to the opulence of the gala. The moment he stepped through the sliding doors, he was enveloped in an atmosphere that was both jarring and sobering. The stark white walls, the sterile smell of antiseptic, and the hurried footsteps of medical personnel created an environment that felt worlds apart from the lavish event he had just left. He followed the nurse down the busy corridors, each step echoing with the stories of countless patients who had come seeking help. "This is where your donations go," she explained, gesturing toward various rooms filled with the sounds of machines beeping and the murmurs of concerned families. "Every dollar changes lives. This hospital is a lifeline for so many." Ethan felt a pang of guilt wash over him as he observed the patients, their faces etched with pain and uncertainty. He had spent years building his empire, often at the expense of connections to the world outside his own. The contrast between his privileged life and the struggles of those around him struck him like a bolt of lightning. "Why don't more people know about this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why isn't there more awareness?" The nurse paused, her expression softening. It's easy to ignore what we don't see. Many choose to turn a blind eye, but we need advocates, people like you, to share our stories and bring attention to the needs of the community. Ethan nodded, feeling a renewed sense of responsibility wash over him. As they moved deeper into the hospital, he was struck by the resilience of the human spirit, the determination etched into the faces of patients and their families. Each room held a unique story, a testament to life's fragility and strength. They finally came to a small waiting area, where families huddled together, their expressions a mix of hope and despair. Ethan felt a lump in his throat as he realized that he had been living in a bubble, shielded from the realities that so many face daily. "Mr. Carter," the nurse said gently, breaking through his reverie, "there's a patient I think you should meet. She's been through a lot, but her story might resonate with you." Curiosity piqued, Ethan followed her to a secluded ward. As they entered, the air felt heavy with an unspoken sadness. The dimly lit room housed a young woman lying motionless on the bed, her face pale and fragile. Machines beeped softly around her, a rhythmic reminder of the life she clung to. "Her name is Sarah," the nurse whispered. "She's been in critical condition for months, but there's something special about her. I believe you'll understand when you meet her." Ethan stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. There was something hauntingly familiar about her, a connection that tugged at the edges of his memory. As he stood there, looking down at Sarah, he felt the weight of his own existence, the contrast between his life of luxury and the fragility of hers. "Why is she here?" he found himself asking, his voice trembling slightly. "She was involved in a tragic accident," the nurse explained, her tone gentle yet filled with the gravity of the situation. "Her family is devastated. They've been holding on to hope for a miracle." Ethan fought back the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but he felt like an intruder in this sacred space of pain and vulnerability. Yet, something about Sarah sparked an urgency within him, a sense that perhaps their lives were intertwined in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. As he turned to leave the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that his journey was just beginning. The night outside was dark, but within him, a flicker of determination ignited. He had entered this hospital seeking insight, yet he felt as if he had stumbled upon a crucial piece of a puzzle he had long ignored. Ethan Carter was about to discover that the ties that bind us often extend far beyond our understanding, leading us to places we never expected to go. Ethan Carter walked through the dimly lit corridors of the public hospital, each step echoing in the sterile environment. The sterile scent of antiseptic mixed with the faint hum of medical equipment filled the air, creating an atmosphere that felt both foreign and unsettling to him. He had attended countless lavish galas and charity events, but this was a different world, a world where life hung by a thread and hope flickered like a candle in the wind. As he turned a corner, Ethan caught sight of a secluded ward, its door slightly ajar. His curiosity piqued, he approached cautiously. Inside, he found a young woman lying in a hospital bed, pale and fragile, attached to a myriad of tubes and wires. Her chest rose and fell gently, as if the very act of breathing was a battle. There was something about her that stirred an emotion deep within him, a resonance he couldn't quite understand. "Who is she?" he murmured to himself, stepping closer. The nameplate on the edge of her bed read, "Sarah." He felt a strange pull toward her, an inexplicable connection that made his heart race with both concern and a sense of familiarity. Just then, Sarah stirred slightly, her lips moving as if she were whispering something. Ethan leaned in, straining to hear. "Ethan," she breathed, her voice barely audible. The sound sent a chill down his spine. How did she know his name? He straightened up, his mind racing. "Excuse me," he called, glancing down the hallway. A nurse appeared, her brow furrowed with concern as she approached. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her eyes darting to Sarah. "Who is she?" Ethan asked, pointing to the young woman. "Why is she calling my name?" The nurse's expression softened as she looked at Sarah. "This is Sarah. She's been in a coma for several months now. It's not uncommon for patients to call out names of loved ones, even when they're unconscious." "But I don't know her," Ethan said, bewildered. "I've never met her before." The nurse hesitated, her gaze shifting to Sarah. Sometimes, patients may have connections to people they don't consciously remember. It's possible she might have known you in some way, perhaps at a deeper level. Ethan's heart raced. He felt a surge of emotions, confusion, curiosity, and a strange sense of urgency. "Can you tell me more about her condition?" he pressed. The nurse glanced at the chart at the foot of the bed. "She was brought in after a traumatic incident. We've been monitoring her closely. She has a long road ahead, but we're hopeful she'll recover." Ethan took a deep breath, absorbing the nurse's words. He needed to learn more about this woman. Something was gnawing at him, pulling him in like a moth to a flame. He reached for the chart and began to scan the medical notes. "Multiple injuries, extensive therapy, family history of trauma," he read, each line feeling like a punch to the gut. He turned back to the nurse, desperation in his voice. "What kind of trauma did she experience?" The nurse looked sympathetic. "It appears she has a history of abuse and neglect. It's heartbreaking, really, but she's a fighter. We believe she'll wake up, and when she does, she'll have a chance to heal." Ethan's chest tightened at the thought of someone suffering in silence, someone who might have endured the same kind of pain he had experienced in his own life. He glanced back at Sarah, her peaceful face contrasting sharply with the turmoil of her past. "I want to stay," he said suddenly, surprising himself. "I want to learn more about her. Can I do that?" "Of course," the nurse replied, a smile breaking through her concern. "We encourage visitors, especially for patients in her condition. It can be comforting for them." Ethan nodded, determination surging within him. He pulled up a chair beside Sarah's bed, feeling an odd sense of peace as he settled in. The rhythmic beeping of the machines created a backdrop that felt oddly soothing. He reached for her hand, gently taking it in his own. Her skin was cool to the touch, but he felt a spark of warmth as he held her. "Sarah," he whispered, feeling foolish yet compelled. "I don't know why, but I feel like I've known you forever. There's something about you, something that draws me in." He glanced around the room, taking in the photographs and cards that adorned the bedside table, messages of hope from friends and family. A small stuffed bear sat nestled among them, its soft fur worn from countless hugs. Ethan felt a pang of longing, memories of his own childhood flooding back. "What happened to you?" he murmured, his heart aching for the girl who lay before him. "I wish I could help you." Minutes turned into hours as Ethan sat by Sarah's side, lost in thought. He found himself studying the details of her face, the delicate curve of her lips, the way her dark hair framed her features, and the faint freckles that danced across her nose. There was an undeniable beauty in her vulnerability, a strength that resonated with him. As he leaned back in his chair, Ethan remembered the stories his parents had told him about their family, tales of love and loss, and a sister who had gone missing years ago. The memories were like ghosts, haunting him with questions that had never been answered. The thought of his sister lingered in the back of his mind, intertwining with the feelings he had for Sarah. Could it be, he thought, a sudden surge of hope igniting within him? Could she somehow be connected to my sister? He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. It was too far-fetched, too painful to consider. But the more he looked at Sarah, the more he felt that inexplicable bond. It was as if a thread connected their fates, weaving them together in a tapestry of shared history and unspoken truths. "Maybe I'm just imagining things," he whispered to himself, rubbing his temples as he tried to clear his thoughts. But the notion wouldn't leave him. He resolved to uncover the truth, to find out who Sarah really was and how she fit into the puzzle of his life. As the hours passed and the sun began to set outside, casting a golden hue through the window, Ethan felt a sense of purpose wash over him. He would return to the hospital every day, learn more about Sarah, and, if fate allowed, unravel the mystery that tied their lives together. "Just hold on," he said softly, squeezing her hand. "I'll be here. I won't let you go through this alone." In that moment, Ethan Carter made a silent promise, not just to Sarah, but to himself. He would seek the truth, no matter how painful it might be, and perhaps, in the process, find a piece of himself that had been lost for far too long. As Ethan stood by Sarah's bedside, An overwhelming mix of emotions flooded through him. The sterile scent of antiseptic mingled with the faint aroma of flowers that had been brought in by well-wishers. The room, bathed in the soft glow of morning light, seemed to amplify the fragile atmosphere surrounding him. He had spent hours here, lost in thoughts of the mystery that tied him to this young woman, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. In a sudden, startling moment, Sarah's eyelids fluttered open, revealing a pair of deep blue eyes that seemed to hold a universe of unspoken stories. Ethan felt his breath hitch in his throat as their gazes locked. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, a spark that ignited a deep, primal response within him. "Ethan," she whispered, the sound barely escaping her lips but resonating like a bell ringing through the silence. "Sarah?" he stammered, his heart racing. His mind raced with confusion and disbelief. How could she know him? He had never met her before today, and yet there was an undeniable connection that seemed to stretch back through time, pulling at the very fabric of his being. "Ethan," she repeated, her voice slightly stronger now, yet still fragile. "You came." "Yes, I did. I came," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm here now. Can you tell me how you know me?" But Sarah struggled to speak, her mouth moving as if forming words, yet no sound came out. Her brow furrowed in concentration, and Ethan could see the effort it took to piece her thoughts together. The moment stretched, heavy with anticipation, until finally, she managed to gasp, "I remember. A picture of you." A picture? His heart raced even faster. Images of his childhood flashed through his mind, snapshots of family gatherings and celebrations. "What picture, Sarah? Can you describe it?" he pressed, leaning closer, desperate for clarity. But before she could respond, the doors swung open, and Dr. Lisa Reynolds entered. Her presence was commanding yet compassionate, and she immediately sensed the charged atmosphere in the room. "Ethan," she greeted, her tone firm yet gentle. "I see Sarah is awake. This is a significant step forward." "Yes, but she just mentioned a picture," Ethan interjected, urgency lacing his voice. "One that she remembers of me. What does this mean?" Dr. Reynolds approached the bedside, her expression shifting to one of concern as she studied Sarah's face. "Sarah has been through a lot, Ethan. She's been in a coma due to severe trauma, and while awakening is a positive sign, it's crucial that we give her time to process everything. Memory recovery can be unpredictable, and emotional responses can be overwhelming. Can't you tell me what she remembers?" Ethan asked, a knot tightening in his stomach. "She knows me. There has to be something more." "Let's take a step back," Dr. Reynolds suggested, her voice soothing. "Sarah may need some time to regain her strength and stability before delving into memories that could be painful." She turned to Sarah. "You're doing wonderfully, and we'll continue to support you as you heal." Ethan watched as Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to frustration. "No, I need to tell him," she exclaimed, her voice rising slightly. "I have to remember." "Sarah, please," Dr. Reynolds urged gently. "You don't have to force yourself. Just breathe." Ethan felt a deep sense of empathy for Sarah. He could see the determination in her eyes, the flicker of hope mingled with fear. "It's okay, Sarah," he said softly, trying to calm her. "You don't have to rush. I'm here for you, no matter what." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, he thought she might succumb to the weight of her exhaustion. But she shook her head, determination returning. I was taken," she finally managed, her voice trembling. "I remember darkness and fear. But your face, it was in my dreams." "What do you mean?" Ethan pressed, his heart pounding in his chest. "What dreams?" "I don't know everything," she said, her voice faltering. "But I remember being somewhere cold and lonely. And then you were there. You were always there." Ethan's mind whirled. The implications of her words sent shivers down his spine. "Sarah, I need to know more. How did you end up here? What happened to you?" At that moment, Dr. Reynolds interjected, "Ethan, perhaps it's best if we take this one step at a time. Sarah needs to feel safe before we probe deeper into her past. But what if her memories hold the key to everything?" Ethan challenged, his frustration bubbling to the surface. What if she remembers something critical, something that could explain our connection? Dr. Reynolds regarded him with a mix of understanding and concern. I get that you're invested in Sarah's recovery, Ethan, but pushing her too hard could do more harm than good. Let's allow her to navigate her memories at her own pace. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he knew he had to respect Sarah's process. He glanced back at her, heart aching with the desire to help. I'll be here, Sarah. I promise. Whenever you're ready to talk, I'll listen. As he spoke those words, a soft smile broke across Sarah's face, a flicker of warmth amidst the chaos of her emotions. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Dr. Reynolds smiled gently at the two of them. Let's focus on your recovery for now, Sarah. We'll take it one day at a time. With that, Ethan settled back into his chair, his heart heavy yet hopeful. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah held the answers to questions he had long buried. As he watched her drift into a peaceful slumber, he vowed to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried in the crevices of their shared past. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan became a fixture in the hospital. He visited Sarah daily, sharing stories about his life, his successes, and even his struggles. He learned about her hobbies, her dreams, and the little things that made her who she was. But every conversation always circled back to that elusive connection. The picture she mentioned, the memories that danced just out of reach. One afternoon, as he sat by her bedside, Sarah stirred awake, a hint of clarity in her eyes. Ethan, she said slowly, her voice stronger than before. I think I remember something else. His heart raced with anticipation. What is it, Sarah? Please tell me. It was a house, she began, her brow furrowing in concentration. A big house with a garden. I think I was happy there, before everything changed.
A house.
Ethan echoed, leaning in closer. Can you describe it? Where was it? She hesitated, her eyes searching his. I don't know. I just see flashes. There were people, a man and a woman. They were kind to me. Ethan felt a chill creep down his spine. Did they have names? Did you call them anything? I don't remember names, she said, frustration evident in her tone. But they were important. They were family. Family. The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. Ethan's mind raced, connecting dots that had previously felt too scattered to align. Sarah, he said carefully, do you think they could have been your parents? She nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. I want to remember more. I need to find them, to find the truth. Ethan's heart ached for her. He knew that she was searching for answers, just as he was, and the thought of possibly uncovering the truth about his own past, while also helping her, felt like a heavy burden they both shared. We'll find them, Sarah. I promise. Together, we'll uncover the truth. As he spoke those words, Ethan felt a new sense of purpose ignite within him. He had come to the hospital seeking a connection to his past, and now he found himself intertwined with Sarah's journey. There was something beautiful about their shared quest for answers, a bond that transcended their individual struggles. In the days that followed, their conversations became richer, their connection deeper. But with each revelation, the weight of their intertwined fates pressed heavier on Ethan's heart. As he delved deeper into Sarah's memories, he felt the shadows of his own past looming ever closer, waiting to be confronted. And yet, amidst the uncertainty and fear, a flicker of hope remained. Perhaps in uncovering Sarah's truth, he would also find his own. All he had to do was keep searching, keep believing, and above all, keep loving and supporting the woman who had unknowingly become the key to understanding his life. Ethan Carter found himself at the hospital every day, the sterile scent of antiseptic and the muted sounds of beeping machines becoming a part of his routine. Each visit was a blend of anticipation and anxiety as he approached Sarah's bedside, where hope and uncertainty collided. He had never imagined himself in a situation like this, sitting by the bed of a woman whose existence had somehow been intertwined with his own, despite the vast chasm of their circumstances. On this particular day, the sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. Ethan pulled a chair closer to Sarah, who lay there, her face pale but peaceful. He took a deep breath, ready to dive into another conversation that would peel back the layers of her past, revealing fragments of a life filled with shadows. "Hey, Sarah," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "How are you feeling today?" She blinked slowly, a faint smile breaking through her lips as she focused on him. "Better, I think. I can remember more now," she replied, her voice hoarse yet resolute. Ethan leaned in closer, his heart racing. "What do you remember?" Sarah paused, her brow furrowing slightly as she searched her memory. I remember being scared. There were loud voices, and I was hiding." Her eyes darted to the ceiling as if trying to piece together the fragments of her past. "It was dark, and I felt so alone." Ethan's chest tightened at her words. He felt a pang of empathy for the little girl she once was, lost in a world of fear. "I can't imagine how frightening that must have been," he said gently. "But you're safe now. You have people who care about you." She nodded, her gaze steady on him. "I know, but it's hard to shake off the feeling of being lost. Like I'm still searching for something, someone." "Someone?" Ethan echoed, intrigued. He leaned in, sensing that this could be a breakthrough. "Do you remember who that someone might be?" Sarah hesitated, biting her lip as she struggled with her thoughts. I think there was someone. A woman. She was always there, but I can't see her face." Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "I just remember her voice. It was soothing, like a lullaby." Ethan's mind raced. A woman? Could it be someone from his past? The pieces felt tantalizingly close, yet still out of reach. "What else do you remember?" he pressed, his heart pounding with urgency. "I remember a toy," she said, her voice now more certain. "A little doll. It had long hair and a blue dress. I think it was important to me." At this, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "A doll? Can you describe it more?" he asked, his heart racing as memories from his own childhood began to surface. It had a name," Sarah continued, her brows knitting together in concentration. "Lucy. Yes, Lucy. I used to hold her every night." Ethan's mind reeled. Lucy. That doll belonged to his sister, Emily, who had vanished without a trace years ago. He could still picture Emily playing with it, her laughter ringing through their home, a sound that had long since been swallowed by silence. "Lucy was my sister's doll," he said, the words tumbling out before he could stop himself. "Emily had one just like that." "What?" Sarah's eyes widened, a flicker of recognition lighting them up. "Emily? That name feels familiar, but I can't quite grasp it." Ethan's heart raced. "Do you think you knew her?" he asked, leaning forward, desperate for answers. "Do you think you were friends?" "It's possible," Sarah replied, her voice trembling with uncertainty, "but I don't know how. Everything is a blur, like pieces of a puzzle scattered everywhere." The weight of her words sank deep into Ethan's chest. He was dealing with a missing piece of his own life, and here was Sarah, a woman who might hold the key to understanding what had happened to his sister. "We'll figure it out," he promised, his voice firm. "I won't stop until we find the truth." Days turned into weeks as Ethan continued to visit Sarah, each encounter unraveling more layers of her past. They talked about her childhood, her fleeting memories, and the haunted look in her eyes when she spoke of her fears. Despite the uncertainty, a bond was forming between them, woven together by shared experiences and the lingering echoes of loss. One afternoon, as Ethan sat by her bedside, Sarah's expression shifted. "I feel like I'm on the edge of something," she murmured, her brow furrowing in concentration. "There's a memory. It's just out of reach." "Take your time," Ethan encouraged, his heart racing at the prospect of a breakthrough. "What do you feel?" "It's a place," she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "A garden? I think I played there. There were flowers, and I remember sunshine and laughter." "Laughter?" Ethan repeated, captivated. "Do you remember who was there with you?" I don't know, but there was a woman. She was smiling, and I felt happy." Sarah's eyes drifted away, lost in the reverie of her elusive memory. Ethan's stomach churned with a mixture of hope and dread. "Do you remember anything more about her?" Sarah shook her head, frustration creeping into her expression. It's like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. The harder I try, the more it slips away. But I know she was important, like a mother to me. The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. Ethan's heart raced as he considered the possibility. Could this woman be someone from his family? He felt a surge of determination to uncover the truth. We'll get to the bottom of this, Sarah. You're not alone anymore. As the days passed, their conversations deepened, revealing more glimpses of Sarah's fractured past. Each revelation brought forth new questions, and with them, a growing urgency to discover the answers. One day, as they sat together, Ethan asked, "What would you say to that woman if you could see her again?" Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she whispered, "I would tell her I missed her, that I was scared and alone for so long. But now I'm not. I want to know why she left, why I was alone." Ethan's heart ached for her, and he reached out, squeezing her hand gently. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. I promise you that. We'll find her, and we'll find out what happened." Then, as if the universe had been waiting for the right moment, Sarah's expression shifted, her eyes narrowing as a flicker of recognition crossed her face. "Wait," she said slowly. "There was something else, a name. I think I heard someone say it." "What name?" Ethan leaned forward, every fiber of his being focused on her. "I don't know if it's important," she said hesitantly, "but it sounded like Carter." Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. The connection was undeniable, and a chill ran down his spine. "Carter? That's my last name. Do you think it means something?" Sarah's eyes searched his, and in that moment, Ethan saw a glimmer of understanding. But before she could respond, the door creaked open, and Dr. Lisa Reynolds stepped into the room, her expression professional yet warm. "Good afternoon, you too," she said, her voice light. "How are we today?" Ethan didn't want to break the momentum of their conversation, but felt a sense of dread wash over him. He turned to Sarah, who looked equally apprehensive. "We were just discussing some memories," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Dr. Reynolds nodded, her eyes flickering with curiosity. "That's great to hear. Memory recovery is an important part of the healing process. Let's keep working on that, shall we?" As Dr. Reynolds engaged Sarah in conversation about her progress, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to align, but he needed more time. He needed to know more about Sarah, her past, and how it intertwined with his own. As the doctor spoke, Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. Could Sarah really be his sister? Could they piece together the fragments of their lives? The answers were tantalizingly close, yet still obscured by shadows of the past, waiting to be unveiled. Ethan Carter sat in the dim light of his study, surrounded by an array of family photos and old documents that chronicled lives he had barely known. The ornate wooden desk, a relic from his family's past, seemed to loom over him, its surface cluttered with remnants of memories he had long tried to bury. His heart raced as he rifled through the papers, searching for anything that could connect him to the young woman in the hospital, whose face haunted him day and night. "Come on, there has to be something here," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He could still hear Sarah's soft voice echoing in his mind, the way she had said his name with a mixture of fear and familiarity. It puzzled him how a stranger could feel so intimately linked to his life. And yet, the more he learned about her, the more he felt the weight of their shared history. With trembling hands, he pulled out a yellowing envelope that contained old photographs. The first image that met his gaze was of a family gathering from years ago. The faces in the picture were almost unrecognizable, worn by time and the inevitable passage of life. But as he turned the photo over, his breath caught in his throat. There, in the corner, was Sarah, a child with wide, innocent eyes, her hair framing her face in soft curls, standing next to his sister, Emily. The resemblance was uncanny. "Ethan, are you okay?" His assistant, Claire, peeked into the room, concern etched across her features. He quickly turned the photograph face down. "Yeah, just looking for something," he replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've been at this for hours. Maybe you should take a break?" Claire suggested, stepping into the room. He shook his head. "I can't. I need to make sense of this. Claire walked closer, her curiosity piqued. What are you trying to make sense of? You seem different lately. Ethan hesitated, the turmoil inside him refusing to settle. It's about Sarah. I think she might be connected to my sister. Claire's eyes widened. What do you mean? How? He hesitated for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I found an old photo. Sarah looks just like Emily when she was a child. It's almost eerie. I need to know if they are connected somehow. Have you asked her? Claire ventured cautiously. I can't just ask her out of the blue. What if I'm wrong? What if she doesn't remember? The thought of Sarah not knowing her past, of being afraid to recount her memories, gnawed at him. Claire placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You won't know unless you try. And you deserve answers, Ethan. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. You're right. I need to confront her with this. With newfound determination, he gathered the photographs and headed to the hospital. As he walked through the sterile corridors, the smell of antiseptic filled his nostrils, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. Each step felt heavier as he approached her room, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Hey, Sarah, he said softly as he entered her room. She looked up from her pillow, her gaze filled with a mix of surprise and recognition. Ethan, you came back? I did. I found something I need to show you, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He carefully laid the photographs on the small table beside her bed, his fingers lingering on the image of Emily and Sarah side by side. What is it? She asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. Look at this, he urged, pointing to the photograph. Do you recognize anyone in this picture? As Sarah's eyes scanned the photo, a flicker of recognition crossed her features. That girl, she looks like me. Ethan's heart raced. Yes, she does. That girl is my sister, Emily. She disappeared years ago, and I never found out what happened to her. I need to know if you remember anything about being taken. A shadow fell across Sarah's face, her expression shifting to one of fear. Taken? I don't know. I remember flashes, shadows, voices. But please try to remember. You might hold the key to finding out what happened to both of us. Ethan pressed gently, desperate for answers. I wish I could help you, she whispered, her voice trembling. But it's all so blurry. I was so young. I just remember feeling scared. Scared of who? Ethan leaned closer, his heart aching for the girl in front of him. I don't know. There were people. They took me. And then I woke up somewhere else. Her eyes widened, tears pooling in their corners. But I can't remember where. Ethan felt a knot tightening in his stomach. What do you mean? You don't know where you were? I was in a dark place, Sarah murmured, her voice barely audible. I just wanted to go home. Before Ethan could respond, the door swung open, and Detective Mark Sullivan entered the room, his presence commanding and authoritative. Ethan, I need to speak with you urgently. Ethan turned, frustration coursing through him. Can't this wait? I'm in the middle of something important. Sullivan's expression was grave. No, it can't. This is about Sarah. We've found some new leads that could change everything. Ethan looked back at Sarah, who appeared equally confused and alarmed. What do you mean? What leads? Evidence has surfaced that might connect both Sarah and your sister to a network we've been investigating for years, Sullivan explained, his tone serious. We believe there's a chance we can find out what really happened. Sarah's face paled, and she instinctively clutched the sheets of her bed. A network? What kind of network? A trafficking ring that operated in this area, Sullivan clarified, his voice steady. We've been working to dismantle it, and we think there may be more victims than we initially believed. If you can help us recall any details, it could be vital. Ethan felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. So you think there's a chance we could find Emily? Sullivan nodded. If we can identify the people involved, we might be able to trace back to her. But I need your help, both of you. Any detail, no matter how small, could be the key. Ethan turned to Sarah, his heart racing at the prospect of potentially uncovering the truth. Sarah, if you have any memories, anything at all, I'll try, she whispered, determination igniting in her eyes. I'll do whatever it takes to remember. Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll figure this out together." As they sat in that room, the air thick with tension and hope, he realized that their lives were intertwined in ways he had never anticipated. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Together, they would seek the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Ethan sat in the hospital's dimly lit waiting room, a heavy silence enveloping him. Detective Mark Sullivan had just left after outlining the leads they would pursue regarding the network of kidnappers. The revelation that Sarah had been abducted not for herself, but due to a tragic case of mistaken identity weighed heavily on his heart. How could this be happening? The thought of his sister, who had been missing for so long, resonated within him like a distant echo of hope. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair, trying to piece together the fragments of his past that now felt painfully close yet frustratingly out of reach. The detective had shared information about a series of abductions that occurred years ago, all linking back to a group that had operated under the radar. What if Sarah was the key to finding out what happened to his sister? The thought ignited a fire within him, a sense of urgency that propelled him forward. "Ethan?" A soft voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to see Dr. Lisa Reynolds approaching, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Hey, Lisa," he replied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about the case." She sat down across from him, her hands clasped together, the weight of their shared knowledge evident in her demeanor. "I heard about the detective's visit. It sounds like you're getting closer to the truth." Ethan nodded, but his eyes remained distant. "Closer, but still so far away. I've spent years searching for my sister, and now I find out that someone else has been living her life, or a version of it. It's maddening." Lisa sighed, her compassion palpable. "I can't imagine what you're feeling, Ethan. But remember, you're not alone in this. Sarah is a fighter. She's shown remarkable resilience since waking up." "Yeah, but what if she doesn't remember everything? What if we never find out what really happened?" Ethan's frustration bubbled to the surface. "Then we keep digging. We owe it to both of them to find out the truth." Lisa leaned in closer, her voice steady. "You've already made significant strides. Sarah trusts you. That's important." Ethan smiled faintly at her encouragement. "I hope she does. I need her to trust me. She's the only link I have to my sister now." Just then, a nurse walked by, carrying a clipboard. "Dr. Reynolds, the patient in room 204 is asking for you," she said, glancing at Ethan. "Mr. Carter, you can come with if you'd like." Ethan hesitated but nodded, eager to see Sarah again. As they made their way through the sterile corridors, he felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What would she say? Would she remember more? Would this new revelation about their connection make her feel more vulnerable, or would it bring them closer? When they entered Sarah's room, the sight of her fragile form lying in bed struck Ethan like a physical blow. She looked so small, yet the fire in her eyes shone bright. As he approached, her gaze lifted, and a soft smile broke across her face. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "You came back?" "Of course I did," he replied, pulling a chair closer. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Sarah's expression shifted, a flicker of anxiety crossing her features. "Is it about the past?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Yes, Detective Sullivan was here. He told me about the kidnappers, about you, and about my sister." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might pull away. I remember bits and pieces," she stammered, "but it's all so jumbled." "Take your time. Just tell me what you do remember," he encouraged gently. Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. "I remember being taken, but not why. I remember a lot of noise, and then darkness. I woke up in a different place, with people I didn't know. I thought I was lost." Ethan felt his heart race. "Did they ever say who you were? Did they mention my sister?" She squinted, as if trying to peel back the layers of her memory. "I heard them talk about someone, a girl who looked like me. They thought I was her, I think, but I didn't know who they meant." His breath caught in his throat. "What did she look like?" Sarah hesitated, her brow furrowing as she searched her mind. "Long hair, light eyes, I remember feeling like I was in her shadow. They treated me differently, like I was a substitute. That's it, Ethan breathed, his thoughts racing. You were mistaken for her. That's why they took you. Yes, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. I thought that was my life. I was scared to find out who I really was. Ethan's heart ached for her. But now you're here. You're safe. We can figure this out together. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. What if I'm not who you think I am? What if I'm just a ghost of someone else's life? No, you're not a ghost, he insisted, reaching out to take her hand. You're Sarah. You're real. And you're my sister's only hope. The weight of his words settled between them, an unspoken understanding blossoming in the fragile space. Your sister, she echoed, realization dawning in her eyes. You mean, I could be, yes, Ethan said, his voice firm. I believe you are. You bear her resemblance and the connection we share. It's undeniable. We need to find out what happened to you, to her. You deserve to know who you are. As her hand trembled in his, the room felt charged with a mixture of fear and hope. What if I'm scared of what we'll find? Sarah whispered. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, grounding her. Then we'll face it together. You won't be alone this time. I promise. She looked deep into his eyes, searching for assurance. And if I am your sister, what happens then? Then we rebuild our family, he said, his voice resolute. We'll heal the wounds of the past, and you'll finally have the life you deserve. As Sarah's tears fell freely, Ethan felt an overwhelming wave of emotion wash over him. In that moment, he realized that the bond they shared was not just about blood. It was about resilience, unwavering support, and the promise of redemption. Thank you, Ethan, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never thought I'd find someone who cared enough to help me. Ethan leaned closer, wrapping his arms around her in a gentle embrace. You're not just someone. You're my sister, and I will find you. We will discover the truth together. As they held each other tightly, the world outside faded away, leaving only the warmth of their newfound connection. In that embrace, they were no longer lost. They were found. Together, they would navigate the shadows of the past, forging a path toward a brighter future, one filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a family reunited. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story about overcoming challenges and family love, don't forget to like the video, comment on what touched you the most, and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for our next exciting story.